Good afternoon, good morning. I'm talking today with Michael Jacobs. I'm going to give Michael the opportunity to introduce himself in a few minutes. Now, I want to start off with one question, Michael. I checked your profile and you call yourself a confrontational speaker. Now,
Yes.
what does that entail? What is a
Well,
confrontational speaker?
whatever it means to you. Um, but for me, it means I do not evade or avoid issues. I will voice my opinion, even if it is occasionally unpleasant to the public.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I like as well, because I'm suppose I'm a small bit like you when it comes to that. So you're based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, so and the theme today is going to be the rise of anti-Semitism. So I'm going to have a chat about that over the next few minutes. So well, let me start off by asking. Anti-Semitism is on the rise again, and what do you think is the cause of it, or is there a cause of it?
Well, I think that's a slight misrepresentation, because anti-Semitism is a concept. It's an abstract idea, and abstract ideas are not on the rise or falling or decreasing. They are concepts. They exist inside of our thinking, and ever since Adam and Eve, or more precisely, ever since their offspring, um, there has been conflicts and unresolved issues, and since the Jews are among the most ancient civilizations around, like 4,000 years, that the Romans have not survived the Jews, nor have many other nations and empires and world civilizations. So among the few who can measure whether hatred or intolerance is rising or not, or existing, are the Jews. They have written about this from time immemorial, as witnesses. Unpleasant, very unpleasant to be to be the victim of persecutions and of organized murder, what civilized people call war. It's organized murder. Very unpleasant, but the Jews have survived, so they are witnesses to that, to the intolerance, which does not only apply to them, it's general intolerance, and that's what makes me enthusiastic or confrontational about the issue, because I say, if we can address the issue of intolerance, then we can end war between nations, between groups, between genders, whatever. If we can seriously address this, as the Jews have addressed for centuries, for millennia, the Jews have addressed that issue and said, no, don't hate your neighbor, because you will live or die to regret it. Don't hate your neighbor. Love him, because he is just like you. I mean, it even was adopted as a credo of the Christians, who are not known to have loved the Jews, but they adopted that credo.
Yeah,
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to me, that's. I mean, I am a Christian, but to me, it's always I'm always amazed with the hate that there is between from a Christian side towards the Jews. That's something I don't understand. But yes, you're right. It is a credo of the Christian faith as well. Love your neighbor as yourself. But then, of course, Christ, as we call the Christians call Christ, Jesus, he was Jewish himself. So to me, it's strange. It's a contradiction that some Christians hate Jews, even though they're praying to a Jew as such. No, but I'm happy you actually brought up the issue of intolerance, because that's what's going to lead into my second question. Okay, you say anti-Semitism, it's a concept, but and my question was then, is this linked to intolerance? And of course, you have already addressed it. And of course, intolerance also links into racism on a wider scale. And with that, I was recently I read an article about an artist, someone I really admired before. He was the bassist of and singer of was the bassist and singer of a band called Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, and he has been very
Open.
outspoken to be to use a political correct term about not only Israel as a state, but the Jewish faith. And I often hear people say, well, but you have to separate the art from the artist. But do we really have to do that when somebody is so, let's call it what it is, obnoxious about his views? Do we really have to separate the
Yeah,
art from the
he abu
artist?
he he abuses, I would say, the podium he has. He corrupts the podium of art by using it for political purposes. Because if we really look at it, through the ages, the intolerance towards Jews, if there were another nation who has lived as long, it would the same would apply. The intolerance towards Jews have worn different disguises. Was it once a theological disguise, saying the Jews have the wrong faith? They don't believe in Jesus. They must be persecuted. Rome has replaced Jerusalem. Rome is the new Jerusalem. The Jews don't count anymore. This was a very frequent expression of the church. And was it, to make a big jump forward in history, was it a racist idea that the Nazis' hatred towards Jews was based on? They are inferior. They, the Jews, and the Slavic people, and the Roma or the Gypsies and others, they are inferior. Therefore, we must get rid of them. It's a justifiable idea. Now, today, the intolerance wears a political disguise. And it is, oh, the Jews are in the wrong country.
Yeah.
Or they apply the wrong kind of self-defense. Or they should still, in the 21st century, not be allowed to defend themselves. But it's clothed in a political discourse, which is, again, a form of abuse or misuse of the discourse itself. It's to use false arguments or partisan arguments.
Yeah. That's something I often say, because every argument, or there's always the element of truth in arguments. There's actually always the element of truth in a lie as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I see, I should say, from a political point of view, that's often, that bit of truth is often used, and then it gets expanded and gets blown out of all proportions, without out of, there's no there's no room anymore nowadays for context. It's just
Right.
we use the element of a truth, and then we just work with it without putting it
Instead of the truth, which is your moral standards or your ethical principles, they should be the eternal, lasting truth, which you measure the circumstances by. And you say, well, these circumstances do not hold up against my ethical principles. And then you know that the truth is one, and opinions, well, there are many, but then it is not your truth is my opinion or the other way around. Then you are very clear about the plurality of opinions versus the truth of that moment.
Yeah.
Like you can say in times of war, I'm not advocating this, but I'm saying in times of war, it may be advisable to rob the bank, to provide money for resistance, weapons, food for dissidents, etc., etc. In times of war, then the principle of thou shalt not steal must be temporarily cast aside. But that is still adhering to the principles of good behavior, or of self-defense, or of ethics. That is not to say, well, every opinion is valid. No, they're not. It depends on the circumstances.
Yeah, of course. And not every opinion is based on a truthful element, truth on truth either. I mean, I can make up an opinion as we go along. For instance,
what the nations try to do, which is failing at the moment, is to cast aside their own role or their own identity in the larger scheme of affairs. If you want to wage war against an ancient nation or an ancient culture, as the Jews, the Israelites, the people of Israel, then you must be honest about your identity. And then you will very quickly discover, like I said before, quoting from the Torah, love your neighbor because he is just like you. That's the current good translation of those few words in Hebrew. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your neighbor, period. He is like you. And then you understand, wow, if I am waging war against an ancient nation, then by doing so, I put myself above them, and I say I'm better than them. We're just like, I mean, the Germans and the Austrians and the French and the Israelis or the Israelites and the Jews are of the same race, of the same human species. To wage war against them is to deny that and to put yourself above them, which is ridiculous because it will hurt you in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the key point. If we just can accept that the fact that we're all the same, really, we're all the same flesh, the same blood. We all
of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not identical. We have various
no
identities and cultures, but we are of the same family of nations.
Of course. I mean, and we all have the same needs. We all need to eat. We all need to drink. We all have. There's no difference there. So I think if people can realize that will be a step further. No,
Yes, as nations, because
yeah, yeah,
that will
no, of
be
course, no, of course, of
if
course.
the people of Era or the people of the UK or the people of Germany will start to talk about themselves as a nation, it will be better for all the inhabitants of that nation. They will start to, they will learn in school to be considerate to one another uh, uh, because they are a nation.
I have a feeling, but this, we'll talk about opinions, that this is one of my opinions, that political correctness often fuels racism and anti-Semitism. I think we're often, and that's why I like what you said. You're a confrontation speaker. You speak. You say it as you think, as it is. You don't evade awkward crashes. You don't
And,
evade.
and you know, Dirk, that political correctness is the opposite of correctness.
Exactly, that's the point I was going to make. I think it has caused so many problems. It's caused the current I call it cancellations of the culture cancels. It fuels groups like BDS, for instance. They if you saw one of the demonstrations recently how they asked for boycotting all goods from Israel, and then straight after it, I saw a documentary on the 1930s in Germany, where you see the Nazis outside shops with banners saying, "Don't go into the shop because they're Jewish." I think, well, it's there's no difference there. It's exactly the same. The 1930s then it's the
It's the
same as
same
obedience.
mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, uh, it was yeah, it
It's
was
a
great.
Soviet concept, the political correctness. It is, please keep your opinion to yourself because the government might listen.
Yeah.
So be correct towards the outside, but all private things, keep them behind the front door. Don't show them.
That's a really good thing. Everything that's that if it's if it's worth showing, show it. It was delightful to talk to you, Michael, and we're gonna have a chat again about this because I think this is important that we kind of address these issues now because I do write a lot about the Holocaust, and sometimes people give out to me, they complain, so why are you still writing about it? That's in the past. I say no, it's not in the past, it's coming back.
Well,
And it's,
even worse, it
that's
has
the
always
exact
been around. The murder of one brother towards the other is pre Moses. It's even pre Abraham. It is not a Jewish thing at all to warn against this,
no, exactly.
because it's the human behavior that we should try to upgrade, and we can only do that in one fashion, and that is by giving the good example.
Yeah, totally. And
so that others may follow.
yeah, and that's what my aim is, to make sure that we don't get a repeat. That well, but that's the thing with history; it always repeats itself. But we shouldn't.
Until
Oh yeah, but we shouldn't use that as an excuse. We should once some stage we should say enough is enough. Stop it here. So yes, again, thanks for your time, Mike. I'm sure we'll talk
pleasure.
again. Thanks.
Great, Dirk. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.